Perfect. Hello, everybody. This is Mike. This is a recording of our call with Ray and Amanda of Jaguar Path. Today, we're going over more than just my report because Chris has some really good gems as well. But the main thing I wanted to touch on is the report card. So just a quick overview of how the report card works is it's a comprehensive deep dive into not just what you're doing, but how you can do it better, things that we can throw into the mix, ideas that we have, things that we see based off of what your competition is doing. And the real goal of this is not just to get an edge in the market or a hypothetical sense of where you should be when it comes to your marketing. Sorry, I have some music on the background. I'm going to turn off. The main thing is also having actionable plans that you can take with you and run. And then at the end of the call, we can decide what that looks like if we do it, if you guys want to do it, or if you want us to have some type of hybrid approach. The point of this really is to provide as much guidance as possible.
Cool.
So before we jump in, the main thing is based off of our call last time is the medicine wheel. That's the main focus on the social side and on the pay-per-click side with the budget, strategy, keyword report, and everything that we've done focused 100% on this specific product with the concept that once we are able to build out this entire funnel, see how it sales with the goal of getting 200 customers or students or however you'd like to refer to them, and making sure that we can use that type of model on the rest of your services. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the funnel for the landing pages. The system that you guys use for your website is a good system because you have e-commerce, you have repeating charges that you can do, you have courses, you can launch courses online. It's very similar to different things like Teachable, except for your platform has a lot more bells and whistles than some of the other education-based platforms. The issue that I was seeing on the landing page is that the content's good, the written content, but from top to bottom, the flow of the design are things that we can tweak in order to make it more optimized to convert. I'm going to pull up a couple of your competition pages as well. I just wanted to throw the screenshot in here as an example for the checkout. Is there's different things that you can see immediately, things that you want to highlight, the schedule, the time, but the main thing is the actual payment processing and checkout. This is an opportunity to grab people's information and then follow up with them to make sure that they actually go back to the register and check out if they decide not to check out. But there's things here right now that I could say, as an example, a barrier to entry would be listing the price right there before capturing a person's information. Getting them to register for the event, at the very least, before giving them a price, you'd want to capture their name and email. And then from there, any other data you can get before you give them a fork in the road, meaning that they're either going to buy or they're not. Having more information in that buying stage is very important because in reality, if you look at an e-commerce store, like Shopify publishes data a lot on the average conversion rate being 3 to 5%. On an actual local business service landing page, as an example, I have a client that's a big moving company in Florida. Their conversion rate can be 5 to 15%, upwards of 20%. And really strong campaigns, which would mean 1 in 5 people convert. But what you're also looking at from that audience is 85% of those people might not convert on a strong campaign. So what do you do in that situation? That's where the remarketing strategy really comes into play. And we cannot properly remarket to people without capturing some of their data. And the reason being is with more and more privacy and security, especially with iPhone, which is one of the things Chris specializes in, which is the Pixel that he has through his company that replaces what Facebook and Google used to use. Because as mobile phone security becomes more important, those types of strategies will get phased out from people that don't have the ability to capture that data. Do you have any questions on this specific segment?
No, the only thought that comes up for me right now is that this is a website page. It's not a landing page. It's part of the website. I'm happy to move things around, and it's almost like as things are evolving through the decades. I have a memory of like make it as easy as possible for them to buy, and I'm thinking that as a website, most people are the people that are already our people that are visiting. I think. So the question would be: is like, are we recreating a landing page and going out to our campaign with a landing page that's separate of this page? Or are we making both the same, even if it is a landing page that's separate? Do we make them identical?
So with that being said, that I'm glad you brought into that. I had mentioned to you on the last call that I want to use one of our landing page platforms that has automated follow-ups with SMS and email when we capture that lead information if they do not make a transaction. The reason being is that we can more quickly modify that page and split test it, and we won't have any restrictions. There won't be any limitations because the platform is something that we control completely,
Yeah.
and we can put a heat map on that platform and a heat map on your platform. First of all, to vet out where the issues are on your current website, but then as we are building out the landing pages, the main goal is you want to, if you were to put a heat map, you'd want to see a button where there's no clicks outside of it. All the eyes, all of the mouses, all the thumbs on your phone, they all end up going to the same point of business. And once you have that flow on the site, translating that back to your main website, not just on the medicine wheel page, but across all your product pages, would be part of the larger goal of just focusing on the medicine wheel start.
Cool. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay, cool. So another thing about the landing page in general, as an example on the medicine wheel, and again, this entire conversation is very much directed to the medicine wheel, but if you think about it, it really does apply to the entire site individually, product by product, service by service. Having the alignment of people on that page being very specific is important. And what I thought was good and what could improve just from this little simple pop-up is being more centric to the service that this pop-up is showing on that page, because what you're effectively doing here is grabbing the information that we would want to be grabbing in order to then follow up with this individual if they didn't make the purchase. But what ends up happening when you fill out this form is that you go to an email newsletter that's generic. It's not necessarily specifically to the ink and medicine wheel. Are you familiar with this pop-up?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think we, for a while, we used it, right, Amanda? Amanda. Amanda put a photo of hers and left.
I
I,
think
I,
she,
can hear, I can hear everyone, but I can't see anyone. Everyone's frozen.
No, we're not. You're the only one that's frozen.
I
You live
don't
in the
know.
coldest state. I'm definitely not frozen. I'm melting. Okay. I was just saying there's this the pop-up. We have this pop-up and we use it a couple times. We use it to capture emails and we use it, but yeah, we use it to capture emails. But let me ask you this. So where does this pop-up show up? When they...
I think it's when you're on the ink and medicine wheel page for 60 seconds or 30 seconds. It's a time duration. It's not like a scroll depth pop-up. That's how I got it to trigger. I actually was on the page for a while before it popped up, but with pop-ups in general.
What
Sorry.
colors, what other colors do we have so it matches more the website and the shaman's colors, the Inca colors? Do we have a choice on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Not just that, but having the content match the offer. So we're on the ink and medicine wheel page, but I think this pop-up is just kind of for like every page on the website based off of what this person is doing on the site, which again, I think the triggers duration of time on each page. But the main thing is that on each page, there's an objective. On this page, we want them to do the ink and medicine wheel. The pop-up should reflect that and push them through that sales process. And if they were to fill out this pop-up form, the next page that they are redirected to should be a squeeze page that help them check out. And if they then bounce, then we can take their name and their email and line that up with a more one-to-one Facebook audience, meaning that this person isn't just having a pixel on their browser after visiting their site. We've actually converted them. Maybe they didn't make a purchase, but we've converted them into a lead by capturing that info. It's easier for us to go back to these other channels and target that person the more data we have on them. And then it also helps us create a data set of people that go through that doorway. And it's easier for us to say, okay, well, 1,000 people went through this doorway. These are the 50 data points behind these 1,000 people. we no longer need to just wait for the next person to come through the door to know who we can target. We can take that same audience and then do an evergreen campaign target.
Okay, quick question. Amanda, you can hear us, right?
Yes.
Uh, these pop-ups, Mike, is Amanda going to make or are you making them? And they are absolutely, the idea is that we make them in our website, right?
So this pop-up exists in your current site. What we'll do when we do the landing pages is we're going to use your same domain, jaguarpath.com, but we'll create a subdomain. We can call it anything we want, like just as an example, like ray.jaguarpath.com. And then we can optimize the pages there. The main thing is that you're on a specific website platform that has a lot of really great features, but it's not the best landing page builder. There's a lot of software and there's a lot of systems that are dedicated just to creating the most beautiful landing pages ever. And then there's software that has membership platforms and e-commerce platforms like yours does. And sorry about this red bar popping up. It's a broken software. But the main thing about this is that we want to be able to move quickly on our end, especially since there's a time crunch. We have a deadline of March and we have a KPI of 200 students. So in reality, what we'd be wanting to do is every 3 to 7 days go through the reporting and make any type of tweaks that we see that are relevant. We don't tweak things just to tweak them. It's really about A/B split testing. But as an example, a tweak that we could do is not having a pop-up versus adding the pop-up. And doing those items on the landing pages that we build makes it a lot easier for us to fluidly do that. And then also it kind of cuts down on the delegation. Having a bunch of people, like for instance, having a graphic designer do the graphics and a web designer do the coder and the person with the project management telling them how to connect. We'll just go in and do the whole thing and then show you guys the results. And then your feedback to us is basically that engine that says, like if Amanda comes to us and says, hey, this is what we want to change or this is something we want to add, then we'll take that and run with it.
Awesome. Sounds really good. Sounds
Okay,
really good.
cool. Now let's go into a couple interesting things that I found. These are things that have not been discussed yet. So with Chicana in general, and is it Chicana?
Chicana.
Chicana. With Chicana in general, there are some very interesting things to take into consideration when it comes to spending ad budget. So Chicana itself has a different meaning for a lot of different industries. There are bands from Lima and other places in the world, restaurants, there are jewelry stores, there are people that are just looking for general information. And then as you can see from this screenshot, one of the most popular searches that come from that keyword is actually Malbec, or a type of wine. So the main thing I wanted to show you in this is that we can absolutely dominate that keyword for Google Ads because the volume is not very, very high. It's $1,300 per month. 1,300 searches per month on average. This is just people searching for it. But of those 1,300 searches, just for that specific keyword, I would be willing to wager that more than half of them would be wasted ad budget, and you never want to show an ad for an irrelevant search. So out of the gate, having a very strong negated strategy is going to be very important for you, to almost to the extent to where if you were to do this yourself, you would want to search Chicana, and you'll find that about 80% of what you are looking at on the internet is irrelevant to what you're trying to sell, which is the medicinal course. So when we do launch PPC for this specific funnel, it's not going to be a big spender. Reason being is that the actual awareness of the person looking for maybe a Chicana mentor, Chicana shaman training is very nominal in the overall search of that specific phrase. And again, it's because the actual root word Chicana has been taken and used for things like wine and bands and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Being aware of this is extremely important.
I would have been surprised if you had said anything different. Chicana is not something people know. How about medicine wheel?
So medicine wheel in itself has a lot of different context as well. In itself, the actual relevancy of the search would be less than Chicana based off of what I was looking at on the landing page. So when it comes to that specific search, that's something else that we can look further into as well. I was looking more on the Chicana side and then also the shaman training, because I'm looking at more of like the general, how can we get a good bucket? And for when I say general, I look at like just the keyword Chicana with no
Yeah,
other
yeah.
attachments. And even
I,
that, even like on the general side, Chicana is just so niche
yeah,
that we'd almost have to back it out again
yeah.
and look at, okay, well, you have this other umbrella up here of people that did the shaman training and other things like the Chicana yoga is also a big one too. So making sure that we can look at those buckets and then advertise those people that fall into that are important. But sorry about that.
I
The
think
main,
shamanic training is where it's at.
I agree with that. I think that shamanic training and then Chicana is like a branch of the shamanic training. What's important to take into consideration are the other branches of shamanic training, and knowing that if we push those branches to the Chicana landing page, it might not have a one-to-one match, which would bring me back to the other point. If we were to take a step back and focus on shamanic training in general with the landing page and then branch out to all the different services that align with that, that's when you start to say, okay, well, this isn't just like the KPI for 200 people or 200 students for the medicine wheel, shamanic training. There's that KPI, but then I'm sure that you're going to have other KPIs for the other things that fall in that bucket. So for all intents and purposes, like this is really kind of like the pathway or the blueprint that you could take to line up each of your verticals. What I'm walking you through is what you would want to do for each and every single one of those. And they're all going to be different because you have a main category and then you have subsets. And subsets sometimes can cross over. So as an example, yoga, Chicana yoga training and shamanic training, somebody might want to take their specific ability to provide those courses and lessons to the next level versus someone who just wants to get better rooted with themselves and benefit themselves internally. Those are also two subsets. You have your trainers and your teachers looking to add more to what they're offering value to their students. And then you also have people that are looking to benefit themselves and heal themselves.
Yeah,
Am I
let's
am I off
what
on that, or does that sound almost is that on path, or am I off a little bit
with what part?
on
Who's
the
taking it?
subs? Sorry, what's that?
Yeah, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that you should look at it as a shamanic training. We have one training, it's called the Jaguar Path 9 month training. This is another training, we call it the Chicana. We can change the name too. There's one word that could be popular because it's also the name of someone else's website who's very well known as the Four Winds. So the Chicana has the four winds, and that could be something that maybe if we put out as a key word, will accidentally capture the millions of people that are looking for the four wind society anyway.
That's actually a really good point that you bring up, because one of the things I was going to mention to you, starting
I
with
don't think Chicana, I don't think Chicana, people don't know Chicana, and I don't think it's a word to use to attract people. It's just like most people don't know what it is, and I think it's nice and there's mysticism. It's like what Chacana is the Incan medicine wheel.
right, and Chicana Inca definitely does have volume. One thing I wanted to show you was this person in particular. You're familiar with Puma Freddy?
Yeah,
So one of the things I wanted to mention is that in this subset, there is an audience of people who are looking for exactly what you're offering. And there are 5 to 7 individual people in your market looking to focus specifically on shaman training with Chicano. So to kind of line up with what you had just said, there's a such thing in Google Ads called a competitor strategy. It's not as available on social as it used to be, where you can say, hey, I want to target anybody who's a fan of this page with ads. You actually really can't do that as well as you could have back in the past. But with Google Ads, you absolutely can target Puma Freddy's Chicana training. And the benefit to this is that while, like you had said, there's a little bit of mysticism there. Maybe it's not top of mind as far as a keyword itself goes. The
yeah,
people providing it and the companies backing the people providing it, because you'll see Puma Freddy on about 4 different websites. And the reason being is that he's all branching back to his on-demand video training. It's like just all a different marketing angle, which is another way of saying they're backlinks from community-oriented pages. But the reality of the situation is that we could park an ad on front of, as an example, let me just show you a quick Puma Freddy shamanic training. It's way easier to just show you real examples than to hypothetically say it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What you'll see is you'll have, I thought I had 4 ads last time. You'll have 3 ads here. And you know what's interesting about this? He's the 4th result in his own search. So a big mistake a lot of people make in Google Ads, and this is, I've talked this one to death over the past several years. People don't bid on their own name because they think to themselves, well, hey, if I search my own name directly, I show up first, right? But the thing is, people don't just search Ray as an example. They're going to search Ray Shamanic Training. So what you do is you're grouping your brand name in with a more generic top-level category search where people are going to be spending money on it. So what you'll find is people looking directly for you are going to end up going to their competitor. Not just that, but if you look at this pricing for Puma, he has this squeeze page. Let me open the page again real quick. Which another thing too, I wanted to talk to you is like the level of content that he has and how we can use this to our advantage. But
Totally.
he also has.
You picked up that link, Amanda? You got the link to this so we could take a look at it, closer look at it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. You guys will have access to all these documents. This report, your keyword report, and your budget allocation. These are just a part of all the things you guys get to walk away with. Anything that you need.
Awesome.
As far and if you need any other resources, Chris has some great reports as well. Our goal here is not to inundate you with information, rather give you a pathway to take this information and run with it. So keep that in mind as well. Now I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
One question I have, so I don't fall too much behind.
Okay.
You mentioned something about our about Simplero as a platform. It is really good. It really is rock and roll. Did you say that you would like to use something else, or are we good to go to create landing pages here?
We'll create landing pages on a third-party software that I've built custom, just so that we can go in there and manipulate things quickly. Reason being is that we do this for all different types of industries, so we've out of necessity had to build a tool.
So we will bring that in as okay. All right, and that when you say this third-party software, how do we have it? How are we working with it? How is it linked to us? What is it?
So there's no cost to you as far as the software goes. If you guys end up wanting to adopt it, it's something that I've built for sales and follow-up. For example, if somebody fills out a form from Facebook and then completely forgets about it 5 minutes later, you can consider that a lead that's hard to convert. Our system, when anybody fills out any of our forms or messages us, we instantly send them an SMS and email inside of 60 seconds. Plus, we have a thing called a ringless voicemail, which allows you to ping them with a voicemail, almost like they got a text where they won't receive a call, but they'll see that they got a voicemail. If they listen to it, it's a pre-recorded voice message that we can work with you to create to kind of say, hey, this is Ray, just letting you know I saw that you had filled out our information. Looking forward to working with you. If you have any questions about the program before you purchase, just let me know. It's just more of like a customer service. It makes each lead more sticky.
We can come back to that. I don't know how. I know I get annoyed when people call me, so we can circle back, and I'm open, but we'll let's just come back to that.
Yeah, cool. Sure. All right, so let's roll back up to some of the other strategies. One of the other things I wanted to talk about is just seeing some of your previous strategy and some of the things that we need to work on with the money you've already spent. The targeting of the entire United States and sometimes the world, I've seen ad budgets spent on your domain for a lot of different segments. And the main thing I'd want to do is regional segmentation for you. Because if you are spending money on Google Ads, it's completely intent-based. The only way you'll pay is if somebody clicks your ad, right? When it comes to social, it's 1,000 views per ad. It's called CPM, which means 1,000 views. And if you have a very, very wide casted net, even if the person that you're targeting has audience targets, like this person is into this and this, you still are going to spend your budget a lot more rapidly, and you're going to have a hard time saying, okay, well, this is working versus that. So one of the things I'd highly recommend for you guys is to look at where your core audience is coming from. And that really comes into where the business sectors are. If you're doing training, like for people that are looking to get an additional course to add to their students, also people in certain demographics that are more in tune with what you're offering. As an example, maybe targeting people in San Diego and LA would be very different than targeting people in Manhattan for what your offer is. Are there people in both areas that can benefit from this? Absolutely. But then you also want to look at, well, you don't have an infinite budget. You know, if you said, hey, money's not an item, I don't care how much we spend, I just want students. That's not typically the approach I would ever recommend people have. It's, okay, well, 20% of our students came from the state of California. That's really what I'm looking for, because if you look at that segmentation, it's going to be a lot easier for you to grab business from those demographics and then spread versus start trying to cover the entire map. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And to take that another step further, if there's states that have never converted a student, excluding them entirely will keep you from spending budget on entire populations that may never become a customer. So that's also very important to consider when running an advertising campaign, is that every penny you have in your campaign has to make sense. You can't waste budget, especially if you have a finite budget.
Yeah, I'm going to say this, and tell me if I'm in alignment here. The first thing that comes up for me is that the East Coast and the West Coast are the ones interested. The center isn't. That's a general thought and a guesstimate. Hold that. Separate from that, the emails we've been sending out, etc., we have like some 10,000 whatever people in our email list. I want to say that probably eight of these 1,000 people are going to be East Coast, because simply I've gotten all these emails when I was working out of Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health. So I personally was getting the emails from people that were visiting in Massachusetts, etc. So in our attempt now, and what I'm hoping you guys can bring aboard, is how do we, cast a bigger net? So I hear what you're saying, and I'm just saying that maybe we don't have enough data from our own ads to actually draw a conclusion. I think that's what I'm saying. Now, if you have other statistics, cool. And I like the idea of not spending money to advertise shamanism in, I don't know, Montana or in Mormon land where we know.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I mean, I don't like to assume, because that's always like the marketer's curse, is being like, well, if you do this, you'll get this. That's never the case. Usually it's always the business owner that ends up giving the final direction because of something like that. But also think about it like this. I love fish. I'm like almost a borderline pescatarian, but when I grew up in Missouri, all we had was catfish. So I never ate fish until I moved to Florida. The demographics and the social norms of certain regions are heavily impacted. And are there amazing yoga studios in downtown St. Louis? Absolutely. There are places, there are escapes, there are pockets that you can seek that community, but it's like a needle in a haystack. But when you drop that 10-mile radius on that needle with Facebook ads, which is the smallest radius that they currently allow you to target, you're capturing that needle and the entire haystack. So it's almost like you're spending 100% of your budget to capture 2% of the audience. Does that make sense?
It does. 2% of our audience, or 2% of the audience that are interested in us.
Exactly. Out of like all the people you'll actually show an ad to and spend money on, only 2% are actually going to be interested because of how limited that segmented demographic is in that region.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so then question to you is how do you get that information? Are you able to discern and get the information of where we're pointing the ads to go to?
Well, first thing to do is to start with the honeypot regions, the top 5 revenue generators, then expand from there. And then there's also the experimentation where, hey, this is a secondary city. I don't really know the market as well as I want to. For instance,
top 5 from the people that we've seen register in our trainings, right?
Correct.
Cool, cool. I like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because think about it again with a finite budget. Let's say you want to spend 15, 2,500, 5,000, whatever. Take who you're targeting and then divide that total budget into those buckets. So let's say you're targeting people that are yoga trainers into shamanism courses, and we have that segment, but then you have 5 cities. You have 2 segments times 5 cities, that's 10 buckets divided by your overall budget. Before you know it, you're only spending 5-10 bucks on these individual buckets. So you have to be very careful and you have to be wise and understanding of that, because you don't want to waste the budget out of the gate. As we get more data, as you get more customers, granted 10,000 people on your list, that's very strong. Out of that 10,000, I'd say at least half are people that we can then continue to segment into who would fit in the bucket we're looking to target for the medicine wheel. But then if you also look at the region where you're getting the majority of your business, if we take that data from your email list of people that have transacted with you against the data that we see in that we can target in that audience, it's going to be more direct. And what that ends up meaning is, I put this here as well, the exclusion strategy, I highlighted this here, is making sure that inside of that 10-mile radius, wherever we put that wherever we drop that pin, that we have a healthy exclusion strategy as well for people that will not fall on that bucket, so that even inside of that needle, we're not just hitting the general public. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. All right.
Okay. So now moving on to, this pairs up with that last conversation. This is the demographic part of it, age and gender. So making sure that we're looking at the people who are converting. I like to look at age in 9-year segments, because it's really easy to exclude the younger audiences that might not be as money forward as far as investing in their practices. There might be a few people in that bucket. Based off of what I found just from looking at it, the majority of what I saw was your age ranges between 30 to 45 would be a good, healthy starting point. I would need your confirmation and feedback on that, because we might even be able to go more narrow. Because another
No,
thing,
I would definitely go wider. There's a lot of people, a lot of women. 90% is women always, and if you would ask me to say quickly who I see, 40 to 60. Women, 40 to 60. And I'm cool to say 30 also. But that's like our biggest audience. And I'm like looking through all this. We've worked through all this and we've created our audiences, or I should be fair and say Amanda has worked through this and has created audiences. And I think if you guys go back in there together with this, you'll tweak. I think we're not too far already in what we have. But again, as we move and say when we start our first advertisement, hopefully in the next couple of days, or we start a first advertisement and maybe do 2 or 3 of them, and I guess that's what you're doing to compare. See what you could tweak with Amanda and see which ones, But I think that's like, and it's also an experience of the last 15 years. That's the prime, like, women from 40 to 60 are the ones that are seeking spirituality, they're seeking health, they're seeking evolution, they're seekers. They're like, they didn't feel completion. In 30, 35, there's a midlife crisis, and that really just pops up.
I like that.
Anything you want, Amanda, to add? Because I know you've done a lot of hours of work on this, so please go ahead.
No, everything you said, I agree with exactly. That's exactly the audience that we focused on, was women 40 to 60. And that's who you see, and like you
In
said.
all my
Yeah.
classes the last 15 years.
Yeah. So like there's some, I'm 34, and there's a few, like I think that this is like the age of starting to get curious, and then 40 to 60 is like ready. Yeah.
So the learning stage really kind of kicks in like late 30s.
Yeah.
Good. While we're on the topic, affluency, I mean, are we talking mid to upper level when it comes to like income? Like, is there any more spiritual? I mean, not spiritual,
Absolutely.
demographic
Middle
data?
class and up, right? Middle class and up. People, and I mean, I would guess it's people with 35, 40,000 and up, but I'll go 30,000 plus. Now that's what I'm tracking.
Okay.
And again, we have like people like, I mean, what are the categories you have when you say middle class and upper middle class? What are the categories we're looking at?
So it's really so unfortunately, and this isn't my doing, this is just how audience targeting works with data, is you have the 50% of net income, then 60, 70, 80, 95, and then 1% of income. Anybody who falls underneath 50% of the average income in the country is put into a bucket from 0 to 50. I'm sure you might be able to understand that, but it's not something that I do. It's just how the data.
Well, what's the average income? What's that per year that we're talking about?
In the United States, it's just the average income is always changing, but the way that they put buckets from, as an example, like Visa, MasterCard, Census, they look at 0 to 50% of the income level, then it's 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 80 to 90, with the higher the percentage, the higher the income.
So I am and I am not understanding. Help me out here. Sorry, I got lost. So we
Mike, is
have
that
middle
50%?
class in America is really actually the 70% of the population. But when we're talking about who takes the trainings, I feel that it is people that are making again about 30,000 and plus. We have people that are making a lot more money. And I'm just saying that I don't know if that helps. I'm saying it as maybe answering your question. I'm not sure.
No, that does help. So, because I mean, like 30K to 50K, again, like in the middle of the country is livable, but 30K to 50K in California is poverty.
Okay,
Mike, what
cool.
is that percentage in relation to?
The amount of, like, so for instance, the people who make the most income versus the least, it's either like if you have 0% income, you make zero money, upwards of 50% of the income compared to the rest of the country.
Gotcha.
If you look at how people refer to the 1%, this scale would be like the opposite of that.
Cool. All right. Let's move forward with the idea that maybe we capture something a little bit more, and also it's like if we decide to go ahead, then these are the details that you're going to be looking at with Amanda and plugging in and or tweaking what we already have. So let us fast forward. Let's go to the next part.
Sure. And again, just to kind of sum this up, when you split out these ages, what you'll see is this ad set's targeting this audience. We know who we want between these ages. And what you'll see is the age bracket itself that's different. The cost per lead will be $10 per new customer, $20 per new customer, $50 per new customer. No new customers in this bracket. What we can do is just pause those ones that aren't producing or the ones that are producing more expensive leads, because then organically the rest of the budget will then rush into the buckets that are generating more leads, which if you have three ad sets, one generating a $10 lead, a $20 lead, and a $50 lead, if you pause the $50 lead and the $20 lead, then you have 70 more dollars in budget to allocate towards that $10 lead. So you'll get 7 times more leads. That's all else, all other variables aside, that's how that works for optimization. It's like active ad management. One of the biggest things isn't just creating new ads, it's pausing the ads that don't work as well as the others.
Well, of course, yeah. That's why we're running two or three to choose which one is the best one. And the best one is the one that people are clicking in the most, which actually brings the price down to the $10 example instead of 50 because there's more people, right? So the average cost goes down. Cool. Perfect.
All right. So one of the other things I had mentioned is some of the targeting for audiences. There's some audiences that we're missing that were allowing people who were irrelevant to go in. And I know that we've kind of talked about this, so I don't want to get too into detail on this because this is something we're also going to work on that we kind of already touched on. But a big thing I wanted to mention was that a great way for us to really have a good spend at a primary audience is making sure that we don't just look at one or two things, but we're looking at the full spectrum. And this kind of ties into this conversation as well. Taking this bucket, combining it like 40 to 60 women that like A, B, and C and do not like A, B, and C. Because what you
I
end up
think
having,
we have that, right? Amanda, we already have a lot of that info and we already plugged it in. So you can use that and see how, yeah, how that works. Cool.
all right, perfect. So on Google Ad side, this specifically is more for the social part, but this comes to placements with social, especially with Facebook and Instagram. They have audience networks and they have partner areas, and they have the Facebook marketplace where you can buy a bicycle down the street if you want. They have all these different places where they've figured out, hey, we could put an ad here and it could be relevant for who's looking for these different areas, or maybe they're on a different website and Facebook is a partner with that website, so you can show an ad there. The vast majority of ad spend that is bled on Facebook ads isn't even on Facebook. And a lot of people don't really notice that at first because Facebook recommends automatic placement. It says, hey, we know where your audience is. Let us do the work and show the ad where we think it's going to convert better. Newsfeed is 100% where you're going to want to start split testing, and you're only going to do newsfeed. Reason being is that it's the predominant converter placement on social media. And to say that the other placements are useless is not true. They serve their purpose.
But they're the 10%.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
okay, let's go for the 90%.
Yeah. So then the other thing too is like, okay, well, we have to split test 30 audiences, and that doesn't even get into the creative. That doesn't get into the headlines. That doesn't get into the offer. That doesn't get into the service. Start the funnel on the newsfeed. Get it optimized. Pause 80% of your ads because the law of 80-20 prevails. And once you have that 20% running, that's when you can add, here's this feed. Let's add it here and see how it works.
And we may not need to either. Okay, cool.
Right. You might not ever take it that far. It really depends on how far you want to take it.
I don't think we want to. There's something. It's just like we're also known in the industry. Like people know us. We've been around a long time. So I think the news feed is the place. And yes, okay, go right ahead.
Sure. And Amanda, this is where that section is. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but I just wanted to highlight this for Ray. If you ever hop in, Ray, and take a look at your own ad accounts, if you ever see an ad set that has automatic, that's something you should raise an eyebrow to, because
Yeah,
it should be
go to
manual.
manual. And that's where we're at, manual. Yeah, totally.
So Puma Freddy, main thing with him is that he's selling similar products and module courses online. And before you shoot the messenger, I'm still on the outside looking in. I'm sure as we continue to work closer together, I'll become a lot more familiar with you and your products and your differentiation between your competitors. But the things that were interesting that popped out of my mind on this page specifically is the level of detail that he had on his modules was extensive. And what I mean by that here, I actually have it up already, is it goes through the modules multiple times. And let me go up to the top here. It's a lot easier to see from the beginning.
And this is again is this is a landing page.
Yes, this is Puma Freddy's landing page. So this is specifically a content-driven conversation. I am not a big fan of this design. This is not something that I would ever design.
Yeah, I think that yeah, it's a little bit.
Yeah, try not to look at the actual visual aesthetics. Focus more on the content. The main thing is the modules, the highlights, but then what they'll find out is like what you get out of this, and then in-depth detail of each module, and then out of each module, what you're going to get out of it. And why this is interesting is because if you have somebody on the page and they're getting this deep into each of the modules, they've already qualified themselves. I mean, if I was doing the report card for our friend Puma here, I would have all kinds of holes to poke in this landing page, especially since it's impossible to even find out where to check out. He doesn't have buttons in the right places. There's too much content in succession. It's not built like a newspaper where you have, hey, here's your fold at the bottom, here's your call to action. It's just a bunch of words. But the interesting thing about this, again, is the extensiveness. It's like, what is Chicano? What are the three worlds? And he really breaks down those individual items, which will help conversion. Now, again, the layout here, not my favorite. I would say it's pretty atrocious. But the main thing, again, is like taking what you have on your site and expanding upon that content is something that we're gonna want to do. Reason being is that in Chicana, you have a very narrow audience. You have a very specific set of competitors. People are going to look at you and probably 2 or 3 other people because there's only that many other people to look at, right?
Yeah, and again, I want you to look at it as a shamanic training. don't let the Chicana thing take you over, because no one knows what a Chicana is. But
Okay.
people know what shamanism is, and if they're looking for something, they're definitely not looking for Chicana. They're looking for shamanic training. So that's for sure. And I don't know how that helps you, but that's definitely something you should know. Like any targeting we're doing, it is around shamanic training. It's just one more shamanic training, and I'm just honing in a specific theme, which is a Chicana. But still, it's not a Chicana thing. It's a shamanic training thing.
Got it. Understood.
And we want to play off again with a word of the medicine wheel, which I feel is a little bit more popular because it is of North America. So yeah, keep on scrolling. I don't know what you think, but I mean, this is like the extent of our freaking handouts. When I go into, and I guess I don't count for anything because I don't think that I'm the average American or the average buyer. I mean, just because I'm not American, first of all. So I don't, yes, I see all these sections to be necessary, but when a landing page becomes about literally 4 or 5 feet long, you have lost me. I'm dyslexic. You've lost me through the second scroll. Like for me, it's like I hear you. Maybe some places will put some read more, but I don't think all this length. It's like, yeah.
Okay, so my feedback for you is I agree 100%. Reason being is this is called long tail sales form. The reality is every fold on a landing page should have a call to action somewhere, whether it's on the right, the left, or the dead center at the bottom, or maybe in the dead center in the middle. But you're going to want to absolutely make sure that if someone scrolls from here, watches this video, they scroll to here, where's the button? Where's the instruction? Where's the guidance? How do I get to the next step? That's where this landing page dropped the ball. Where this landing page did
Where
good.
is it? Does it have a call to action anywhere?
No. That's why I was trying to be nice. I don't know if you know the guy or not. I'm not going to crap on his landing page, but at the end of the day, this is a failure to convert at the very top fold.
You scroll all the way to the bottom, please, for a second, because I've tried several times unsuccessfully for some reason.
Yeah, it's that long. It's literally that long of a landing page.
Yeah, okay, so that's it, and it's actually a weird button too.
Right. Exactly. The main thing too is that there are no other call to actions or instructions. Like,
well, what he has going for him is that he's in the Shift network, and they have millions of people. 10,000 is nothing, and we have peanuts. These guys have hundreds of thousands, I should say, right? It's a Shift network. So I don't know if that is to his advantage or that makes his landing page okay or not. But we agree. I think that you could scroll 3 times and that should be more than enough.
Yeah. I mean, the thing too is that some people are not sold. The reason why you would want to have the longer landing page is because maybe someone's actually doing active research, and the person who's going to have the more specific content or have more of an opportunity to speak directly to that person, the more of a chance they're going to have to convert them. But in reality, if somebody goes from here to here to here to here, they're qualified because they're already spending all that time. If they get to this stage and they start watching any of these videos, I would be issuing a chat bot at the bottom right, like, hey, this is Ray, let's talk. I'd have a pop-up somewhere. I'd also have button sections here. So it's like, let's get started. Scroll down over here. Let's get started. And again, the reason being is that you end up losing people with too much content.
Yeah, that would be my guess.
Yeah,
it's like, I don't want to take the workshop now. It's like, you just gave me all the work. I'm like reading and reading and reading and reading. And I'm like, okay. It's almost like, thank you. And I kind of got something and I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like he's trying too much. And no, I know him, but yeah, I've only met him briefly, and he's cool. He's just cool and just fine, and just another person in the industry. So that. Next, we can move.
Yeah, sure.
And we're gonna go dive in. Thank you for finding this. I think there's gonna be awesome, tons of information that we could use, Amanda. So on that side too, that was really useful.
Yeah.
And again, as I think, like as an example of what some things not to do, and what I hear you say is like, okay, make your page rain, give me a little bit more content, organize it, give me a little bit more, but not this much.
The main thing I'm looking at too is validation. You have all the validation in your reputation organically, and people know you. Some people aren't going to have that much validation, or there's going to be more question held. At the very top, he has 2 video testimonials directly of a customer with no interference from the actual person himself. But then he also has multiple folds of written review. And again, this falls into the long tail sales process, which this whole thing originated decades ago when it came to direct mail. People would tell a whole story at the very end that would be like the sales pitch. And you wouldn't even know you were reading a sales pitch until the end. Granted, you know this is a sales pitch, but that's the idea behind the long tail. But the reality is you're going to capture the majority of the people who are interested in your product within the first 2 folds. If they get to the 3rd fold, then they're doing research. But if they're just scrolling like this and they're not actually looking at the content, it's because they have no instruction and they have no idea where to go or what to do next. So you have to solve that for the user by having the intuition to place that button in the right place and understand how they're using your site.
Yep. Okay.
So, what I was going to do is go through the different competitors, but we kind of really tapped on a lot from Puma Freddy. The main thing that I wanted to mention is, again, the testimonials. We have to really look at what we can do for that, which is a different conversation, reputation management wise. But then also something we have to look at on the content side is who you're looking at price competition wise. You have on the Chicano, again, this isn't the medicine wheel. This is more through the shamanic training, which actually opens us up to more competition if we step outside of this subset. So let's just, for the sake of this call, speak to the subset. 297 versus the 1,000. What are we doing more of versus him? We're doing a 12-week program.
How many sessions is this? Yeah, how many sessions is this? Is a 7-week program?
Yeah, his is a lot less, and it's not live. It's pre-recorded, and it's really just getting access to his content. It's really not.
Yeah. I'll also say this: that is just all that reason is our price is there. Plus, he's not our competition. He's come way after us in the. He's not. He got in the Shift network, so kudos for him for doing that. But he's not in our competition. Our competition is the Four Wind Society and Ingrid Bergman, who are the two biggest people. Like Alberto Villoldo, the Four Wind Society, he is the number one. He's killing it.
How do you spell that last name? Ingrid
Bergman. Am I pronouncing it correctly, Amanda?
Who was it? I put
No, Sandra.
Sandra Engerman.
Sandra Ingerman.
Sandra
like,
Ingerman.
I was really confused for a second.
Totally, yeah. It's like she's not alive anymore. She was gorgeous. Sandra Ingerman.
Okay, got it. Okay.
And both of these people are like they passed the peak of the career and they're in their 70s and moving upward and out. So I would say if there's anything we want to learn or anything we want to compare to, I don't know if you. So
Sorry about that.
as I was saying, these guys are leaving. They're on their way out because they're in their 70s. And I would say also for statistics, their audience is our audience. Anything they do good that we can learn from is what we want to do. We want to learn from and take. And they are at the level and where we're at. What is our audience basically? We have the same audience that the women 40 to 60 and people that do have. And actually, Alberto Villoldo's training, to give you a comparison, is $25,000 for $1,800.
So that is good to know.
Yeah, he has anywhere from 300 to 1,000 students every year. So he's going to sell. Yeah, he's a millionaire.
Well, hey, that's something we can work up towards. I mean, you have to admit, like when I was looking through this research and I was seeing these price points, I was like, well, I mean, being at the top of the market's a good thing because you can have quality. You just have to position yourself like that. But if there's other people that we can look at, then we can always look at our program as an affordable one.
Yeah, let's look at those guys. And I think where we're at is it's like once we are like moving, looking at it this way through the filter of this, it's like we're like Four Wind Society. This is $1,000 thing, is nothing less. Also, like as we move along, what do we learn by the end of this? The end of March, April, May, when it's done, we all sit down and say, okay, is there an after? Is there a cheaper thing we want to sell? Or like we have a $4,800 mark, we have $1,000 mark. We'll talk more about that strategy if we want to have $300 marks, $100 marks, $20 marks. But we'll get to that.
Sure.
Okay, Chicano Yoga Studio.
So before I thought of getting into this, I actually had to hop off at 5. I want to finish this real quick though, and we can always.
I'm gonna have to hop off a little bit earlier, and I'm sorry
Okay.
I didn't realize we're gonna take so long. I appreciate it, and if you guys are good, we can continue tomorrow morning. I
Yeah.
have till 5 o'clock. Okay, we can round it up, close it now, and continue tomorrow morning.
Because I want
my
Chris to
call.
have the floor too. I feel like I didn't even let Chris talk at all. Chris, I'm sorry. Don't hurt me.
No, that's great.
Well,
That's all
Chris didn't know that I was gonna do this, that we're gonna run out of time, and thanks for your patience, Chris. And I feel this is really good because I'm like being educated, I'm understanding
Mhm.
much more, and this is important to me because that's what's been
Awesome.
frustrating in the past. It's like I
Absolutely.
can't tell you what I'm doing. It's like, well,
Exactly. No, I will tell you this
work.
to leave it off. To leave it off for Chris to bring up tomorrow. I wanted to highlight the Chicano Yoga Studio for this actual keyword search that's driving the majority of the traffic for Chicano specifically. The number 2 ranking company is ranking off of a TripAdvisor page that links to a broken website. And the reason why I wanted to highlight that is on Chris's side, the SEO impacts that we could take from this niche and this vertical would be something that we could dominate fairly easy when in comparison to something like ranking for attorneys in New York. Very difficult SEO term, would have to spend a lot to rank there. And this, getting you going on one of Chris's SEO programs that's like had Chris had described prior, I don't see why we wouldn't be ranking top 3 for these terms because the competition is not doing active on-page and off-page SEO the way that Chris's program
Yeah.
works.
But I'm afraid the reason is that they're not doing good so good is that because they should have already known that Chicana is not a word to use. You're not going to be found there. Like a Chicana Yoga Studio, it sounds like someone young that was really impressed when they found out about the Chicana and they got all spiritually moved and they did it. But I can tell you right off the bat, it's not good marketing. It's not gonna bring. They
That's
don't
good.
have
Without getting into the details, we can save it for tomorrow. But I can say that from my preliminary research, when I was looking at terms related to shaman training, it appears similar to what Mike said, that most of the competition that I found, there doesn't seem to be any ongoing SEO strategy whatsoever, aside from maybe the 4 wins. And that could also be just because of the amount of traffic that they've already been gaining, because Google always gives credit for sites that are already getting good traffic. So it doesn't look like there's been a whole bunch of organization on this side of things for most of the people providing this, which is great for
Yep.
us.
Cool. I like that. Okay, cool. Well, do you guys want to continue tomorrow morning?
Yeah, let's if we can, let's try to pick a time right now. Let's see.
Yeah, I would be better off in the morning.
Yeah,
Uh, but then again,
I'm free anytime before 1 p.m.
Yeah,
So really whatever.
I have a class at 12, so I have to be I have a class at 11 to
About
12.
10 a.m. Eastern time.
Let's do that 9 just in case that so we don't run out of time again.
Okay,
At
9 a.m.
at 10:45 a.m. I'm setting up my yoga class because I'm teaching online. So 10 to 10:45 I think is not going to be enough. Let's say
Okay.
9:30. How's 9:30, guys?
Yeah, great.
Or
And that will
sure.
give us just a little bit over an hour. Do you feel confident with that?
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, Mike, you're probably more than halfway done, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's really just kind of summarizing the details that we went in up front kind of set the tone for what the platform is going to run off of. And then there's so many things that I can add on that honestly, if we just took 25% of this and ran with it, we could. But I'm the type of person that wants to look at every little thing, which is why I take the extra time to do these reports.
Okay, sounds good. So 9:30
everybody.
a.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you
then.
guys in
All
the
right.
morning.
Have a good night, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
guys. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. We will talk earlier in the morning.
Okay.